Good evening and welcome to Domination Submission Radio. My name is Mike Mackay and I'll be your host with the most DS, BDSM, kink, and fetish talk on Blog Talk Radio tonight. This is a call-in show, so if you're interested in calling in and asking a question, giving us your opinion, or just going on a rant, then give us a call. The number is 347-857-1862. Again, 347-857-1862. Give us a call. We'll put you in the queue, and we'll try to get you on the air so you can tell the world what you think about what we're talking about tonight. And what we're talking about tonight is spanking, a subject near and dear to many people's hearts. So I think we'll have some fun with that. Let me tell you how you can be a part of the show other than calling in. You can check out our chat room at Blog Talk Radio. If you're listening to us live, then scroll to the bottom of your screen at Blog Talk Radio, and you'll see a chat room there. You can read what other people are typing, and if you are logged in at Blog Talk Radio with a free account, then you can probably even talk in our chat room. I'd also encourage you to check out our website at domination-submission.com, domination-submission.com, and there you'll see our links to Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, and all the other social media where you can link up with us and find out what's going on. I also have in my virtual studio today my co-host, who is the author of the Trust in Me series of erotic fiction, and that would be LB Shaw. How you doing, LB?
I'm doing good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I got my appetite back. I've been eating all kinds of crazy crap lately, so that's how I know I'm doing good. Everyone tries to feed me. Everyone tells me I'm too skinny, and they're always trying to feed me stuff. And, I just got done with a jalapeno cheddar bratwurst with spicy mustard and a lime beer. So you know I'm good now. Anyway, we're talking about spanking today. What do you think of this topic?
Well, you know what I think of this topic. For those who don't know, I love spanking. Spankings are the best. And when you first told me we were going to talk about this, I thought, we're going to talk about spanking for an hour? But really, there's a lot of ground to cover with different types of spankings, from disciplinary or punishment to role-playing or age play spankings, to preventing a behavior problem, to erotic spankings, different ways to deliver, different tools. Tops get a certain type of satisfaction out of them, and same for the bottom are submissive. So I think there's a lot of things to talk about.
Absolutely. And you left out the fun. You didn't say anything about fun.
Oh, definitely. Well, it's fun. Everyone should try it.
You know the part I like about spanking? This part right here.
Okay, guess that really...
That's the part I like. We're going to also bring on board a regular guest on the show, somebody that we like to hear from. And how you doing, Little Red?
I am dying laughing, sweetheart. Oh, my God.
You like that, huh? Play that again for you. If you like.
I think I made that sound a couple of weeks ago.
Guess that really...
That sounds very different than my spankings, but...
I think I made that sound kind of a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. I was there.
Oh, ow, my ribs hurt. Ow.
Now, we are going to talk about a lot of different things, and LB brought up a lot of great topics here, and feel free to chime in anytime, Red, because you are our resident
masochist.
Extreme masochist. So feel free to chime in anytime, but we are going to briefly go over some of the things we'll talk about. We're obviously going to talk about some of the different types of spanking. We're going to talk about spankings used as either punishment or reward. We'll talk about the risks. You know, it's hard to believe that there are risks to spanking, but there are, and maybe some precautions you might want to take, the steps that you might want to take if you're a beginner, just looking into spanking. And then we'll touch on something that we talked about in the last show, which is, how do you break it to your partner that you really want a spanking? So, I mean, those are some things we're definitely going to talk about in this show. But I got a trivia question for you ladies. Who's the movie star who is privately known by his nickname Spanky Jack?
Oh, God, I have no idea.
Do I need to play the Jeopardy music?
The Jeopardy music's not going to help. Can I get a lifeline and call a friend?
I'll take over your need for 200, Alex. It's actually Jack Nicholson, believe it or not.
Really?
Jack Nicholson has a spanking thing going. So that's
I knew he was kinky, but...
Yeah, so we're every once in a while, I'm going to throw out a little trivia for you about spanking as we go through the show this evening. So let's...
we got to put our thinking caps on, LV. This is going to be a long show.
You know, it's easy to believe that this is kind of a new thing and that it's kind of a recent fetish that has just recently gotten popular, but it's been around for a long time. I have a clip here from 1937, and this is from a movie called Slaves in Bondage. 1937. I mean, this is like before color movies even, and I think it's kind of funny. It's a scene with the women in kind of a pillow fight, which kind of turns into a spanking thing. Let's have a listen.
Ow! Oh, you rat! Oh, all right. You want to play like that? That's for nothing. And now it's my turn. Well, all right. Not too hard now. I'm going home.
And that's the star of the movie going like, I'm out of here.
He doesn't have his mission.
Yeah. Of course, knowing you ladies, it would be like, can I move in right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what were you going to say, Red?
I was going to say, that sounded a little light for my end of the spectrum, but okay.
Yeah.
The truth comes out.
The extreme spankings that you get, Red, would probably... scare the crap out of almost anybody. Now, have either of you watched...
so much fun!
Have either of you watched the movie The Secretary?
Yes.
Now, what did you think of the movie, Red?
Overall, I was really not that impressed. I was like, okay, I watched it. Yeah, check that block.
Check the block, huh? Yeah, I kind of agree with you. The dominant in that movie really made me want to just slap him.
It really turned my stomach because a lot of people now have that misconception, much like the 50 Shades of Grey thing, that this is what it is. This is how it is. And, oh, my God, I wish I could shake some of these people that just, they read something and they think this is how it is. You know, you spank with a crop, you do this, you do that, and you are the dommiest dom ever. And I really look at them and like, dude, seriously? You hurt their feelings when you laugh at them, but I don't mean to. It just happens.
Yeah. Well, I hated the Dom in that movie because he was so conflicted and so insecure and so wigged out. It just drove me crazy because, for me, a dominant is somebody who is in charge of at least himself, if nothing else. And so it just drove me crazy. But there was one scene that I really, really liked in the movie. And by the way, I loved the submissive in that movie because she's just, oh, my God, I mean, she's just wonderful. I mean, she just tried so hard to please. And
she's a puppy.
Yeah, it's kind of at the heart of being a submissive. But the one scene that I really, really loved in this movie was the spanking scene. Now, I don't know if you remember that, Red, and you really need to see this movie, LB. You really do. Even if you want to, you'll end up wanting to slap it.
I've been wanting to watch it. I've been wanting to watch it for a long time now because I'm a big James Spader fan. But
Well, the scene I really like is the one where he, and of course the submissive in the movie is the secretary, and he's the boss at a firm, and he has her taking dictation, and then he has her read back the letter that he has just dictated to her. And of course, she's doing it bent over the desk, and he's behind her delivering a spanking while she's repeating the dictation. Have a listen to this. I really like this scene.
Where should he at?
Dear Mr. Garvey, I am grateful to you for referring me to your case. The subject of animal captivity has been of interest to me. For quite a while. And my secretary has prepared research material that I think you will find illuminating.
So
that's my kind of spanking.
Tell me that's not hot.
You're going to end up making us have to take cold showers after the show.
See, that the sound, he had oomph to it. He was in it. That's the way you're supposed to do it.
And her, I mean, that's, to me, it's not just the spanking. It's how she is reacting.
Her whimpers were, ooh. Those were yummy.
I mean, I love that scene. I could probably watch that scene. I'll probably listen to that clip 3 or 4 more times tonight just before I go to bed because it's, Very, very nice. At any rate, so we are going to take a quick musical break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about some of the different types of spanking and how spanking is used as either a punishment or a reward in many relationships. So you're listening to DS Radio. I'm Mike McKay. My co-host is LB Shaw, and my guest is Little Red. We'll be back in about a minute and a half. We are back. You're listening to Domination Submission Radio. My name is Mike McKay. My co-host is LB Shaw, and our guest is Little Red today. And we're talking about spanking, a subject near and dear to my heart and Little Red's bottom. Isn't that right, Red?
I did for you.
I've got another bit of trivia here for you. What 1930s television show had a character named Spanky?
Little Rascals.
Little Rascals.
It was actually called Our Gang. Bet you didn't
know. That's right.
So you learn something every day.
I do remember that.
Yeah, Jack Nicholson was Spanky Jack, and Our Gang was led by Spanky. So let's talk about punishment rewards, shall we? What do you think, LB? Is spanking a punishment or a reward for you?
Well, for me, it can be both, but for us, it's typically sort of a combination of reward or just therapeutic type spanking. It's not necessarily used as discipline or punishment. Well, I was just going to say that it's I think it's more of something that helps keep me in a certain mindset when I want to be spanked. It doesn't have anything to do with a behavior problem or anything like that.
What mindset would that be?
Just if I've had like a bad day, I just need to be, I don't know how to explain it. It's just therapeutic for me sometimes.
It's a reset button.
Yeah,
interesting.
Exactly.
So it's therapeutic for you, and I hear Red agree with that. Reset button. Red, tell me more.
For me, it's both for punishment, because I have a very wicked little friend that Sir has, and I'm not the best friends with this paddle, but he's also used it because, for me, it's more therapeutic. I take my punishment like a good girl when I earn it, and believe me, I earn it.
Now,
but it's also my reset button, because for me, it gets me back to zero if I'm having a really bad day and I'm not where I should be, and we'll sit down and discuss it, and he'll be like, what do we need to do to help you? And that's one of the tools that we use, whether it be the belt or the paddle or his hand. It's very much therapeutic for me because, one, I get the pain I need, and two, I get reset back to where zero, because it just wipes that whole day out for me.
Okay, now this is interesting because most people who are not familiar with the BDSM lifestyle and probably have never really practiced spanking in a relationship previously, when you say spanking, the first thing they're going to think about is punishment. And then sometimes they will say, okay, well, maybe reward. But both of you immediately went to therapeutic, neither punishment nor reward. Do you think that's unusual? Do you think that the common perspective or the common stereotype of spanking is it's always either got to be punishment or reward? How common do you think it is that a lot of people consider it a form of therapy in their relationships?
I think a lot of people do once they experience it. I know, just to clarify a little bit with my personal situation and in the 4 or 5 months that my husband and I have been delving into this stuff, I've learned a lot about myself and him as well. And it seems that with each passing week or two, I kind of go through this mental checklist of things that I've done, things that I like, and things that I might enjoy, but I could do without that. So as I do this, I kind of strip away the layers to what really lies at the heart of all of this for me, and it's the power exchange. That's really what I crave. Now, having said that, since my husband and I don't live a 24/7 lifestyle, spanking is a great way for me to achieve that feeling of that power exchange. So it meets so many needs that go beyond just erotic or sensual or punishment. I think people that are new to this might classify spanking as just, yes, a sensual or erotic thing like erotic spankings or a form of punishment. But I think once you experience it, it can become, not for everyone, but it can become so much more than that.
How about you, Red? Do you think that most people who are outside the lifestyle overlook this therapeutic side of spanking?
I think it has a lot to do with the technique of the one who is doing the spanking, because you can absolutely do a great deal of harm if it's not done correctly, because you can break the tailbone, you can do some serious detriment. So if you're doing it in a very controlled way, punishment as a reward or as a reset, you can absolutely do that whole power exchange, because I was sitting here nodding while LB was talking, because you are giving that control over to somebody else and you are entrusting that they are going to do the correct thing with you and not lean towards the abusive side, which it can go to if it's not done correctly. And then nobody gets anything out of it.
Right. LB, do you have, at least in your short experience with this, do you have different types of spankings? I mean, do you say, okay, this is a therapeutic spanking, this one is a punitive spanking, this one is an erotic spanking? I mean, do you have, at least in your mind and your relationship, different kinds of spanking?
There are, but it's not like he says, this is the kind of spanking I'm going to give you. It's not announced. He's grabbed me before and sort of given me a tease spanking. I don't really know what that would qualify as, like if I'm being kind of a smart ass.
Yeah, playful.
Playful spanking. And then there's been the sensual, spanking, erotic spanking that happens when we're playing. Sometimes he uses spanking as a warm-up before he canes me. Mm-hmm. So those are the different, definitely different types.
Red's a big fan of caning, aren't you, Red?
Yeah, that is so on my to-do list today. Not.
Red doesn't like caning.
No, Red would be quite content for the rest of her years on the face of the earth if she never got to meet another cane in her life.
Well, I could do without the cane. I was going to say this. If you were to tell me that we're going to take everything away, every BDSM activity, except for one thing, you can pick one thing, it would hands down be spanking. I could go without everything else that I enjoy, but I don't think I could go without that. And, of course, 4 or 5, 6 months ago, I would have never thought that to be the case. But, I appreciate the pain that it delivers, mm-hmm. but it's very different than a nice bare-handed spanking.
Yeah. It's funny that you would say that, LB, because I feel from the dominance point of view, from the perspective of a top, I agree with you 100%. If someone came to me and said, you have to give up everything but one thing in this lifestyle as far as the activities go, and again, I always draw the line that, there's this relationship dynamic where there might not be any kink activity at all, and then there's the kink lifestyle, which there may not be any relationship at all. And it's nice to have both, and I tend to be one of those people who likes to have both. But if someone came to me and said, you have to give up everything but one thing, you can keep one thing when it comes to BDS types of play, spanking would be the one thing that I kept. Because, I don't know, there's just something really cool about spanking. And I think it goes back to our development and our primal feelings about authority. And that's what I mean. It's usually the way a child, for example, learns for the very first time that there is a definite hierarchy in life. And if you piss off the powers that be, you're going to have a red bottom. I mean, that's usually the very first lesson that a child learns in that area. And so for some of us, it's kind of that archetypal lesson in dominance / submission, because every child at least as a child, has to learn how to be kind of a submissive in a sense, and has to recognize the dominance, the authority of his or her parents. And so I really do think that spankings kind of take us back on a primal level to like when we're 3 years old. Like, holy crap, yeah, they really are in charge, and boy, does my bottom hurt. And even if we don't consciously think it or remember it, I think it takes us back there almost instantly. What do you think?
Well, not only that, the bottom can be also a huge erogenous, not huge, that's probably not the best thing to say. Your bottom can be an erogenous zone. Yeah, poor choice of words, but that's erogenous zone. It's close to your genitals, and some people, and myself included, get more aroused by a hand grabbing their bottom than a hand grabbing their genitals. I mean, to me, it's not about the sting and the slap. It's the grabbing and the touching of the hands and the delivery of that whack. It's just, there's just so much. I don't know. There's so much to it. I told you this was special to me. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is to me too. And in fact, I'm right there with you. Not only is the bottom a very sensitive area of the body, but I happen to believe you don't have to confine your spankings just to the bottom. I happen to like the backs of the thighs, inner thighs, and even the genitals to a certain extent, depending on the person's ability to appreciate that. Some people do and some people don't. But yeah, there's nothing that says that you can only spank somebody's bottom. And anyone who thinks that's a hard and fast rule is cheating themselves, I think. So Red, do you have different kinds of spankings?
We do. Obviously, me being a masochist, heavy spankings do come into play where it probably sounds far more worse than what it truly is, because I like thuds. So the belt for me is stingy. I take it like a good girl because it works for him. The paddle is definitely on more of the punishment scale because the paddle and I are not best friends. I don't think we will ever be best friends.
Well, a lot of
with his hand is really erotic for me. The flogger is another good tool.
Well, I think we'll kind of save the paddling and the flogging and stuff for another show. Let's stick kind of with open-handed spankings, but the different types of those. For example, we had a couple of months ago on the show, we had a couple named Clint and Chelsea who run a domestic discipline blog and write quite a bit about their experiences in the domestic discipline lifestyle, which is not a kinky lifestyle. It is actually it's kind of a religious-based lifestyle that says that the head of the household should be a stern disciplinarian, and that when your spouse screws up, then he or she deserves a spanking from the head of the household, and it's delivered as needed. And it's not done in a cruel way, but it's also not done in an erotic or sexual way either. In fact, it was kind of interesting that these folks were so very much into spanking, but I said, well, do you know anything about BDSM? No, nothing, not a thing about BDSM.
Why should I sign up for that?
Yeah, the concept of an erotic spanking seemed completely outside of their consideration. It wasn't something they had even thought about. Kind of, at least that's the impression I got. I don't know. I'm not sure I believe that entirely, but that's from me, the guy who considers all spankings kind of erotic. So it's kind of hard for me to believe that somebody can, be that much into spankings and never consider it to be an erotic thing. But that's probably just me. But I just thought it was very interesting. They also have something called maintenance spankings, and this goes back to what you, LB, and Red were talking about, which was the whole reset button, the therapeutic purposes of a spanking. They do these maintenance spankings, which are not because you did anything wrong. It's just to remind you who's in charge. And I thought that was that's kind of cool, actually. At least.
Yeah, I like that. I like the thought of that. I wish I got those. On a regular basis, I should say.
It was very interesting. In fact, if you're out there listening to the show today and you are interested in the domestic discipline movement, then you can go to our website at domination-submission.com. Click on the DS Radio link there, and there's a link to that show. I think you'll find it very, very interesting. I got another little clip for you here. This is Dominatrix getting ready to spank her bad boy.
Gonna give him a good spanking over my knee.
I like the accent personally. She's talking about an over-the-knee spanking, otherwise known as an OTK spanking, over the knee. There are lots of other types of spanking, and we'll talk about some of those when we come back from the break. You're listening to Domination Submission Radio. My name's Mike Mackay. My co-host is LB Shaw, and our guest is Lil Red. This is Domination Submission Radio. I'm Mike McKay, and we're talking about spanking today. And I guess we're going to move on to kind of another aspect of that topic, which is the risks that are associated with spanking and maybe the precautions that you might want to take if you are thinking about getting into spanking for the first time. So I'm going to toss this to LB, because you did your homework on this. I just kind of, I'm flying by the seat of my pants tonight in case anybody hasn't figured that out yet. So tell me, LB, what are some of the risks and precautions that you would want to consider about spanking?
Oh, I would say probably some of the risks would be bruising to the point maybe where your skin is bruised, also soreness. I imagine if it's just a barehanded spanking, you could probably, if you're spanking in the wrong place, you could probably break your tailbone. I mean, I think you'd have to strike pretty hard, so I don't think that's something that would. I guess you would have to consider someone's health condition too. If they have something where they bruise easily, a condition that causes them to bruise easily, or maybe their bones are brittle. I don't know. Just kind of tossing these things out. If you're spanking with an object, of course, breaking the skin is a consideration.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to stick with barehanded spankings for this show. We'll talk about some of the paddle stuff like that in another show, I think. I think once you start making this topic about impact play in general, we're going to be all over the place. So let's just kind of, we'll just stick with spanking now, make it simple for the folks who are just trying to sort that part out. And believe me, it can be hard to sort out. In fact, I got a message from one of our listeners that says that it's interesting the way something she once thought was so simple is viewed so widely and differently by so many people. And it's true. You know, you think of spanking as just spanking. You don't really stop and think, okay, there's punishment spankings, there's reward spankings, there's maintenance spankings, there's a reset spanking, there's over-the-knee spankings, there's over-the-desk spankings, and you could go on and on and on and on. How about you, Red? Do you have any risks and precautions you want to toss out there?
What LB already said, you have to be aware of bruising because some people have clotting conditions, blood conditions, bleeding disorders. That can be a very big risk. This is why you sit down and you go, hey, do you have any medical conditions I need to know about? Sometimes some people don't know about them. You can also bust the blood vessels in your hand and cause you a great deal of pain with those, because I've seen it happen. You hit just in the right spot at the wrong time, and now you can't move your thumb because your palm is completely bruised and you can't grip anything. And
this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. This is one of those times where that actually is the case.
I hated my parents for saying that because it never, ever happened. It always hurt me more than it hurt them.
Well, you know, for our listeners, I should probably toss out the fact that Red is a former military medic, so she does have a kind of a medical perspective on a lot of the things that we talk about, and I think that's a valuable perspective. Let me toss out what I think are some of the things you need to think about, and not in any particular order, and not really. Again, I'm flying by the seat of my pants tonight. I wish I'd made some notes or something, but I just.
You're wearing pants tonight?
Yeah, I am. In fact, I'm wearing Halloween pants tonight. And I'm not going to take a picture. Thank you very much. But they're little ghosts.
Come on, it would be so
black
sweet.
or white ghosts all over them. Anyway,
what are Halloween pants?
They're like pajamas with little ghosts, little like Casper the Ghost. I'm wearing my Casper the Ghost pants. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about some of the. Oh, you guys stop.
I'm laughing silently.
I have to clarify that because of this fiasco that you recently went through.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, let's not the whole no pants thing. anyway, okay, first thing I would say is that one of the things that people seriously underestimate is the ability of the human body to surprise you about an hour later by turning black and blue when you never thought it would. It's really, really, really easy to give somebody a spanking and go, wow, that's a nice rosy shade of red, and be very happy with yourself until about an hour later you look again, and now it's black and blue, and it looks like somebody dropped a ton of bricks on somebody. Ever had that happen to either of you?
Yeah, but I like it when it does that.
Yeah, well, you're weird. Most people do not
Hey, now.
Most people don't want to be black and blue from a spanking, but I think it's something that you have to think about. And especially, even you, Red, as I recall, about 2 weeks ago when a certain short Asian guy was pounding your butt. And by the way, for our listeners, Red is in a very good relationship with her dominant. I just happened to be the one delivering a spanking that particular night. But as I recall, his instructions to you prior to that scene were no permanent marks, right?
They were, and I followed his rules very carefully.
As did I. But the point I'm making here is that some people don't know where that line is, and you can't judge just by how it looks right now, because the skin has a bad habit of surprising you a little bit later on. So what's nice and rosy red right now can be black and blue in 30 minutes. So it's something that you really do need to think about, particularly if you happen to be one of those people who probably doesn't need to show up at work black and blue, or show up at a doctor's appointment black and blue, or whatever. So, or come home to your husband black and blue. So those are things to consider. Another thing that I would throw out there is most people would never think in a million years that you should wash your hands before delivering a spanking. Okay? I mean, it's just not something you think of. It's like, oh, I'm going to give somebody a spanking. I better go wash my hands with antibacterial soap. But one of the things that happens when you deliver a sustained and serious spanking is that the skin starts to get a little raw. And by raw, I mean it literally starts to break down a little bit. And you start to see a little bit of splotchiness there, a little bit of oozy, like the blood kind of oozing through the skin, because the skin's starting to break down a little bit under the spanking. And when that happens, if you just happen to have dirty hands, or hands that have not been adequately washed with antibacterial soap, now you're just pounding bacteria through the skin into the bloodstream. And I probably don't have to, so I probably don't have to remind you that that's not usually a good thing, particularly over a wide area, which is what a spanking delivers. It's just over a wide area. So here you are with a wide swath of skin, which is now looking a little bit like hamburger, and now you're pounding, you're slapping that pretty hard with the palm of your hand, which was just used for weeding the garden or cleaning the garage.
Hamburger.
Yeah. So, and God forbid that you were just, making fried chicken or something, because that would be really, really bad. So, wash your hands. And in fact, make sure that the bottom has been washed recently too, because it doesn't matter if you have clean hands if you're still forcing bacteria through the skin of a dirty bottom. So,
well, to give everybody an idea, medical standpoint, you're going to be raw open, and everybody knows about bacteria, everybody knows about viruses. This can lead to abscesses, and if you don't get it treated, this can lead to sepsis, which is where your blood basically is toxic to your body. Mm-hmm. So this is a very big health danger if you're not paying attention to what's going on around you.
Absolutely. And, these are things that people don't really think about, because they think, okay, it's just a spanking. What can go wrong? Well, that's exactly the kind of thinking that gets you in trouble at some point. Famous last words. What can possibly go wrong? Kind of like, what duck? I'll let you think about that one. All right, let's talk a little bit about, and this was a good step, what are the risks and precautions you might want to take. Now, if you were giving advice to a beginner, somebody who's just getting into spanking, and, actually LB is kind of, she's just been into it for a few months, maybe several months now, and Red, you've been on the receiving end of paddles and hands and whips and crops and stuff like that for most of your life. Red, give LB some advice on what she should do as a beginner just getting into spanking.
Start light. Always, always, always start with light swats of anything you are going to use. Make sure everything is clean and sanitary, because you don't know who got that crop used on them last, or that hand touched $500 in money and you don't know where all that money's been. Make sure everything is clean and you're in a good place, because if you're not in a really good place, granted it's therapeutic for us, but if you're not in a good headspace, this can be a traumatic event for some people because they immediately associate it with, I'm in trouble, this is punishment. So starting out light, more on the sensual side of it, and working into the heavier spankings would be my best tip for anybody who is thinking about getting into spankings, period, because if you start out heavy, you're only going to take about 5 or 6 heavy hits of a hand or any other implement that's used, and it's going to immediately red flag in your mind, and you're going to call yellow, you're going to call red, and that part of the session is done, and God forbid you call red. That's a serious flag in my book for anybody to have to call red after 5 or 6 swats, because that is entirely too heavy, too quick.
Mm-hmm. LB, you, from the perspective of somebody who's really just kind of gotten started in lifestyle and really started playing with some of this, what are some of the tips you would offer people?
I actually couldn't agree more with what Red had to say. I think starting light is always good, and even if you're on regular spankings, you should start light at the beginning anyway. Don't jump right into anything real heavy impact-wise. But also make sure your head's at least a couple of feet away from a wall or another surface. You get spanked.
The dresser. Make sure the dresser is nowhere around you, or the nightstand.
We have to go to our bathroom sometimes because of privacy and kids, and I actually stand in front of the window with the window open and my head out the window. So I had to learn the hard way that head plus glass does not feel good.
Honey.
It's just little things.
LB, I'm going to have a hard time ever seeing you any other way than with your head out of a window being spanked in the bathroom. But
we've done some pretty funny things, but
that's priceless. Yeah. That's priceless. I'll tell you what, we're going to take another real quick break. I'm going to play another quick little clip here from the same British lady who was demonstrating some spanking on the internet. Here you go.
His favourite spanking skirt. I like to spank his cheeks through this. Warms him up nicely.
It kind of goes back to what you were talking about, Red, about getting warmed up, and I think that's a pretty important concept for people. Again, people don't really think about this. They just go, okay, let's do a spanking, and it's wham, I mean, they just go right in there with full force. Without any kind of a warm-up, and you really do. The skin is very malleable. It's very flexible. It can do a lot of stuff, but it doesn't react to shock very well. And so you got to just like you warm up your muscles, you got to warm up your skin too. And when you do, it literally prepares. This is strange. Your skin prepares itself for what's coming. If it has some kind of clue what's coming, and so if you warm up somebody's bottom, that person can take a lot more spankings than if you just start wailing on somebody's bottom. So you might want to keep that in mind. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 1 minute. Domination Submission Radio. My name is Mike Mackay. My co-host is L.B. Shaw, and our guest tonight is Lil Red, who happens to be a personal friend of mine. And we are talking about spankings, a subject near and dear to my heart. Now, I got another trivia question for you ladies, and the trivia question is this. Do either of you watch Futurama?
Oh, God, years ago.
All right.
I've seen it before as as a what is it called? Passerby.
Maybe our listening audience knows the answer to this, but in the animated television series Futurama, which character was always begging Leela for a spanking? Was it Fry, Zap Brannigan, or Dr. Zoidberg? I'll let you guys think about that.
I'm going to guess the doctor.
What do you say, Red?
It was Brannigan, because he never had his pants on.
There you go. Zap Brannigan was always
begging
Leela for a spank. So, and for that, you win a spanking, Red. There you go. We got unlimited door prizes on this show. So we are. Let's talk about something that we touched on in our last show, which is, you're kinky, your partner is not. So let's take it to the subject of spanking now. You want a spanking. How do you break that to your partner? I'm going to start with LB.
Well, I think I'd had an idea on that last show. There's probably lots of subtle ways you can bring it up. Personally, I have not come across too many men that weren't into at least erotic spankings. That subject might be a little bit easier to approach for a lot of men, at least anyway. But you could always just drop your pants and bend over. I feel like a not so subtle message. Or you can, find some pictures in a magazine, cut them out, leave them in your partner's car, and say, "Oh, what's this? Are you trying to give me a hint?" I don't know. Honestly, I'm one of those that's just all about coming right out and saying what I want. If you're comfortable enough with your partner to do that, I think that you should be able to just bring it up and ask what do you think about this or trying this, and see how they react.
What do you think, Red?
You know me very, very well. I am a very direct person.
No, nobody would have ever guessed this.
No, not me.
You are
the
shocking.
epitome of timid and meek.
All of our listeners into a state of shock. Oh, by the way, I just want to share this news. Sometime during tonight's broadcast, we will be but sometime during tonight's broadcast, we will have our 1,000th listener. So that's pretty cool, considering.
Very cool.
That is awesome sauce.
Just before the broadcast, I checked the statistics, and we were at 993 listeners at that point. So sometime in the last 30 minutes, we probably got our 1,000th listener. So if you're that person, go out and celebrate with a spanking. So anyway, go on, Red.
Exciting.
For me, I'm like, sweetie, what would be really great would be if you bent me over and made my ass all red. And that would be, be the bee's knees, sweetie.
This is what I like about you ladies. You're so sly and subtle about these things.
Yeah, subtle is my middle name.
Diplomacy. It's all about diplomacy. Well, this is, strangely enough, this is one of those topics that a lot of people are not just obsessed about, but they're very worried about. How do I break it to my date? And, of course, you guys are thinking in terms of your mates. But, when you're talking about your date, it becomes a little bit more tricky to wade through that particular minefield. And I think that it can be almost traumatic for some. Remember, LB, you were mentioning in the last show about how one of those dates went. You want to just recap that real quick?
How one of my dates went?
Yeah, remember you?
Where I dated someone that wanted to slap me. Is that the one you're talking about?
That's the one, right? Yeah, and you reacted pretty interestingly there.
I think I reacted by just feeling a little intimidated. We had a pretty good relationship, but I think that he never came right out and told me that, or asked me if he could. He just threw out a couple of, made mention several times that he wanted to slap me, and it was always made as a passing comment, never in the heat of the moment. So I think I just kind of tuned it out like, what? I didn't understand it, and it didn't turn me off or make me angry or anything. I just didn't understand why he would want to do that. I think that whether it's spanking or anything else, it can always be scary to ask your partner to try something new. And I think if you're not able to get past that, maybe you shouldn't be in a relationship. If you can't speak up and say what you want, it might be time to evaluate your communication skills and that sort of thing.
Well, I think this is something that's going to be pretty easy if you're in a committed relationship with somebody. I think it gets harder and harder when you are just dating somebody, or you're feeling your way through a fledgling relationship with somebody. So I have my own little cues that I throw out if I'm seeing somebody for the first time or I'm just getting to know somebody. I mean, and these are things that I've kind of said my entire life just because they've worked pretty well in at least introducing the topic as a topic of discussion. For example, when somebody does something that could be in any way interpreted as being kind of bratty behavior, I'll say something like, well, don't make me not spank you. And it's interesting because that immediately goes, what do you mean, not spank me? And then I'll follow that up with, well, in my world, only good girls get spankings. And, if they're not at all interested, it sails right past them and it never gets discussed again. But if they're interested, it opens up that discussion, which is a good thing, I think, usually. If either you got something like that where you introduce it at the topic to somebody who's kind of new and around you and you're just kind of feeling your way through the subject?
I haven't. Well, just because I have only knowingly experienced this stuff with my husband as far as BDSM and stuff, but sometimes I will kind of joke around about things, just kind of gauge his reaction. I can't really, I won't go into any details or anything, but he knows, he kind of knows he knows that I have a tendency to do that. I'll joke around and say, well, maybe I'll just do this, maybe I'll do that, and just to see his reaction, and I can just tell by the look that he gives me if it's something that's going to happen never or not as long as he's alive. I don't know.
Red, you are an extreme masochist. How do you break that to a stranger who might not even suspect that about you?
Timid and meek is my middle name, so it's obviously hard for me. But doing the icebreakers, like, maybe I need a spanking because I was a bad girl. That's not necessarily overbearing for some people, and it's, whatever. And if they blow it off, then I'm like, okay, this is not going to work. Next.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and those are good ways to test the waters. By the way, you're talking about being a bad girl. I've got another clip I want to squeeze in before we get to the end of the show.
Wait. He's as naughty as ever. Obedient. Irritating. Plenty of back chat. He's earned a damn good thrashing today. And a good spanking from my little hand.
I think the best part of that is the accent. What do you think?
It's hard to.
If you could gouge my eyes out and talk to me while she spanked me, I'd be great.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, and this is probably one of those topics that we could come back to again and again and again, because there's just so much cool stuff that can be said about this, and so many different ways you can look at it. And I think my friend is right that there are lots of aspects of spanking that most people don't ever even consider, because again, we think of a spanking as something that we got as a child, and there's only one kind of spanking. That's when you were bad, and it's supposed to be bad, and it's supposed to hurt, but it doesn't have to. I think it's a very good bit of advice that you can start out slow and start out with something that doesn't hurt, a playful spanking, and then kind of work your way up. We're kind of at the end of our time. You got any parting thoughts you want to give the listening audience there, Red?
Slow and steady is always better than hard and fast when it comes to a spanking.
Hard and slow is pretty good, too.
Nice.
Yeah, but to start out with...
I like fast and steady.
Just saying.
For me, hard and fast, baby, all the way. But, again, not everybody is a masochist, such as I.
This is true. I'm glad you called in, Red. Thank you so much. You're welcome to call in anytime.
Thanks, Red.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Lovies.
Bye.
Bye-bye. How about you, LB? You got any parting thoughts you want to leave the folks?
Sure. I always think of those, when I think of spankings, I think, that's one of my favorite things. So I came up with that, or I thought of that song today from what's the name of the show? The movie Sound of Music. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, spankings delivered with a slap and a sting. These are a few of my favorite things.
That's beautiful. That's the first poem I've ever heard about spankings. That's pretty cool. Well, I
only made up the last part of it.
Well, it was great anyway. If I have any parting thoughts for anybody, it would be give it a shot. Sometimes it's a matter of who you're with the circumstances and your frame of mind, and of course the technique. But just because you didn't enjoy it with somebody over here doesn't mean you wouldn't enjoy it with somebody else over there. So give it a shot. We're going to leave you tonight with the secretary again, because I just like her. You've been listening to DS Radio. I'm Mike McConnell, my co-host LB Shaw, and this is the secretary getting her office spanking.
Where's it at?
Dear Mr. Garvey, I am grateful to you for referring me to your case. The subject of animal captivity has been of interest to me. For quite a while. And my secretary has prepared research materials that I think you will find illuminating.